Nigerian Economic Summit underway focuses on poverty to prosperity. Securities and Exchange Commission allays fears on market performance ahead of general elections. Nigerian Stock Exchange market sustains positive momentum. Plus, Central Bank of Nigeria moves to reduce credit risk in mortgage financing. Find out more on the Nigerian Summit holding in Abuja on this edition of Business Express, reaching you on the network service of the NTA. I am Muplang Dakok. In an effort to promote mortgage financing and advanced home ownership, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has announced the introduction of mortgage guarantee companies, MGCs, aimed at reducing credit risk in the mortgage finance sector, as well as increased access to mortgage loans. The new firm, CBN says, will operate with minimum capital base of 6 billion naira and the authority to provide full or partial guarantee for residential mortgage loans. Two Nigerian companies are among 100 MSMEs sponsored by the International Trade Center to participate in the China International Import Expo in November of 2018. The micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises going to China have been selected from different sectors across the country. These include food, textile, and apparel and services. While in Shanghai, the companies will be showcasing their products and services, establishing new contacts with potential business partners, and exploring how to tap into the Chinese market. Only 20 countries are selected for sponsorship this year, and 2 are Nigerian. You are still watching Business Express on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. Acting Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Mary Uduk, has assured investors in the capital market that there is nothing to fear on the performance of the stock market as the 2019 election approaches. Uduk spoke while responding to questions from journalists on the sidelines of the just concluded World Bank IMF annual meetings in Bali, Indonesia. The SEC Acting Director General said the upcoming election might have made some investors to hold back their investments and sell or adopt a wait-and-see strategy until after the elections, but added that it is nothing to worry about. The SEC boss explained that the major contributory factor to the current downward trend of the market is the outflow of foreign investments, which led to sell pressure accumulating into depressed prices. The Commission says it is mapping out strategies to build confidence in the market and encourage more retail investors. The Nigerian equities market sustained its positive momentum for the second consecutive week for investors, responding favorably to third quarter corporate earnings released by some listed companies. For a breakdown of activities for the week ended 19th October 2018, Bosede Abel has details.
A total turnover of 1.3 billion shares worth 15.1 billion naira in 13,478 deals were traded last week by investors on the floor of Nigerian Stock Exchange. The NSE All-Share Index appreciated by 1.19% to close the week at 32,841.69 basis point, while market capitalization was 11.9 trillion naira. All other indices finished higher with the exception of NSE Main Board Index, NSE Consumer Goods Index, NSE Oil and Gas Index, NSE Industrial Goods Index, and NSE Pension Index closed lower. The financial services industry led the activity chart with 1.2 billion shares worth 9.7 billion naira traded in 7,404 deals. The consumer goods industry followed with 62.5 million shares worth 1.6 billion naira. The third place was oil and gas industry with a turnover of 26.3 million shares worth 2.4 billion naira. Trading in the top three equities, Sunu Assurances Nigeria PLC, Zenith Bank PLC, and Guarantee Trust Bank PLC accounted for 772.9 million shares worth 7.8 billion naira in 2,050 deals. There was no trade recorded for exchange-traded products during the week under review. A total of 40,720 units of federal government bonds valued at 42.5 million naira were traded in 26 deals. 20 equities appreciated in price, 42 equities depreciated in price, while 107 equities remain unchanged.
That was Musa Abubakar on the Nigerian Stock Exchange Market Outlook. Now we turn over to Bosede Abel on the global scene, where China rallies the most in more than 2 years, sustaining markets across Asia.
In the early hours of today, Monday, 22nd October, stocks in Africa were majorly positive. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 appreciated 0.70%, Nairobi All-Share 1.11%, Tunisia's Tunidex 0.64%, Namibia Overall Index 0.00%, and Ghana's GSA Composite Index also rose 0.14%. European stocks traded higher as investors focused on earnings and sentiment bounced back after last week's losses. DAX advanced 0.54%, FTSE 100 0.30% to close 770.60, and CAC 40 also appreciated 13.08 points to 5,097.74. Stocks in the United States opened slightly higher Monday morning as investors turned focus away from fears of rising rates to the latest batch of corporate earnings. Dow Jones Industrial Average advanced 62.56 points to 25,444.34, S&P 500 0.04%, and Nasdaq Composite Index 0.48%. Asian stocks rose on Monday as major Chinese indices leaped more than 4%. Nikkei appreciated 0.37%, Shanghai Composite Index 4.09%, and the Hang Seng Index also gained 2.32%.
And crude oil prices tumbled in international market amid concerns over long-term demand outlook. Let's take a look at other commodities. We now move over to the Congress Hall in the Transcorp Hilton, where Leah Katung Babatunde is standing by with updates on the opening of the 24th Nigerian Economic Summit.
The 24th edition of the Nigeria Economic Summit is opened in Abuja with a focus on reducing poverty and increasing prosperity. Now, Vice President Yomi Osinbajo, who declared this event open, spoke extensively on the focus of what government is doing to ensure that poverty is reduced to the barest minimum, with providing job opportunities and, of course, a comfortable environment for investments to thrive. Let's take a listen.
The truth is that despite what would appear to be rising revenues, especially oil revenues, poverty has remained more or less stagnant. And in fact, in the period between 2004 and 2010, doubled actually in absolute numbers. The problem of poverty and the attendant deficits in human development indices becomes more significant because our population continues to grow at about 3% annually, and we are to become the world's most populous nation by 2050. The world's third most populous nation by 2050. Of this population, over 60% will be young people, and about 1.4 million entering the job market every year. Well, how do we explain the paradox of high growth figures and rising poverty and unemployment figures? The first explanation is that high oil revenues do not necessarily translate to jobs. The oil industry by itself produces very few jobs. The high revenues can only translate to jobs and better living standards if the revenues are invested in diversification of the economy, infrastructure, education and healthcare, and social protection for those who cannot work. The question, of course, is what happens to these revenues? How come we're unable to use the revenues in the way that they ought to be used? The most important drain on our resources is grand corruption, the stealing of large sums of public resources by public officials in collaboration with private individuals. I use the expression grand corruption to describe the direct looting of the treasury, not necessarily tied to any government contracts. This is in essence state capture. It is this heinous phenomenon that the Buhari administration has worked on to stop. What happens with grand corruption is that by diverting government revenues to private use, resources are not available to be invested in the manner that they are planned to benefit everyone, to benefit the majority of people. No economy can survive on the theft of the Commonwealth by its custodians. Impossible. And we must address the questions, especially of grand corruption, squarely.
In the cases of successful economic transition, a development-oriented leadership has driven change. Whether that leadership comes from a strong and committed executive or a forward-looking governing party, political guidance is an important element in managing economic change. Developmental leadership reflects important qualities. First, they hold a long time horizon. They look to the future, and they are willing to pursue an agenda that may be politically risky in the near term, but works toward longer term gain. Think for a minute about China's Deng Xiaoping, Indonesia's Suharto, reformers in the PRI in Mexico, or the Communist Party of Vietnam. Not only did they not know whether they would succeed, some of them did not know whether they would come out of the process alive. But they had a vision for the country, they pursued that vision, and they were willing to chase it long-term and consistently to realize a vision. They delegated authority to an expert economic team that could oversee complex reforms over time.
The primary objective of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan was to take us out of recession. But it wasn't just to do that. It was to ensure that we moved on a positive growth, a growth that is sustained, a growth that is diversified, a growth that is inclusive. And I spoke about the various initiatives, many of which we have been implementing in order to sustain that growth momentum. I also spoke about our plan to conduct sector-specific focus labs with the objective of addressing bureaucratic issues investors might face in setting up projects in Nigeria. The labs were held earlier this year. The main labs were held between the 13th of March and the 21st of April, while the post-labs work continued till the 12th of May. The labs were conducted in 3 work streams, namely agriculture and transportation, manufacturing and processing, and power and gas.
The Nigerian Economic Summit Group has been leading private sector engagements and discussions on how to come up with viable policy documents for the government in each administration. Now let's take some views and opinions on how to make this work positively for the good of the Nigerian economy.
They must be able to remain in school for as long and as far as their abilities propel them. And those who teach our children must have the ability, the capacity, and the moral integrity to impart the knowledge that allows the child to think, analyze, and remain curious. We must enable an environment that encourages patient capital, capital which creates value-enhancing jobs in all sectors, leveraging on technology. We should privatize our non-productive assets and free up capital, which can be redirected to education, health, and other social infrastructure. We must deal with our insecurities at all levels.
Yes, we have made policies we have that are sufficient to run this government, but it has always been about the implementation. Where are we getting it wrong, in your opinion?
Is the political will, the execution, because the gap is the execution actually. And that is the political will because, like we had the speaker said, we have seen countries that are ethnically diverse, but religiously diverse, still taking out the political will to make sure that plans are executed to the letter. So our problem is that we've not still risen above that our political, religious diversity to making sure that we'll execute. Because in the phase of execution, you will find out that the coloration of the ethnicity and religious does affect execution.
Well, the strategy is yet to be approved by the Federal Executive Council, but from 2008 to date, a greater percentage of the strategy have been implemented. I'm proud to say that most of the reforms under public financial management were extracted from the National Strategy on Public Service Reforms. We're happy to say that the strategy document program of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation is part and parcel of the National Strategy on Public Service Reforms. We're hoping that it will be approved soonest, and once that is done, we'll see a better public service that will ensure improvement in quality of service delivered to Nigeria.
Nigeria's population is said to be rising at an annual rate of 3%. How prepared is the Nigerian nation for this population growth?
Measure Nigeria with a country of similar size, so to say, Indonesia and Nigeria, big countries, also have natural resources, what this one has done right and what this one has done wrong. And I think all the key things he stated, I might be able to add one or two. If we get serious in Nigeria and keep on doing it, then we should get there. But one important thing that needs to be highlighted, Nigerians keep shying away from, and that is the issue of birth control. You can see that Indonesia went to where they were because they were able to bring their population growth rate to about 1%. I mean, most of the poverty level we have now in Nigeria is as a result of more mouths being produced, okay, without we being in a position to create enough wealth to cut it. So as we are trying to create more wealth, we should also try to see how we can lower our population. If we are serious, we really need to do that.
because when you reduce tax, there'll be more money in people's pocket to spend. Two, in my line of business, there should be a consumption tax during holiday period, summer holiday, when a lot of Nigerians do go abroad. The reason is, if there is a consumption tax, that will discourage some people, not everybody, to go abroad to spend the money in Nigeria. I mean, look at it this way. If 10,000 people comes into Abuja today, that means there might be 10, 15 or 20 more of Hilton Transcorp in Abuja. So if you are looking for investment, 200 million people in Nigeria, that's a lot of money, because when you look at the population, they're going to eat, they're going to drink, someone is going to carry the waste, and to me, that's a lot of money. So we need to spend inwards. So
that is a wrap of what has transpired here so far at the 24th edition of the Nigeria Economic Summit, which opened this Monday in Abuja, the Transcorp Hilton Congress Hall. The program Business Express will continue in a moment right there in the studio. My name is Leah Katung Babatunde.
Thank you very much, Leah. And on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, trading for today, Monday, 22nd October, appreciated by 0.37% to close at 32,962.82, with market capitalization at 12.03 trillion naira. And that's how we wrap up Business Express today, Monday. But before we go, remember you can contribute to the program via our website, businessexpress@nta.gov.ng. You can also reach us through our Twitter handle at NTA News Now. And don't forget to use the hashtag BizX showing on your screen. Keep a date with us Wednesday for another edition. I am Muplang Dakok. Bye for now.